Okay, so first of all, apologies for the delayed and missed videos this week. I've had a few specialist appointments, just, reaching that point with my shoulder where finally just about at the point where I can be free of the sling and all that sort of stuff. So, all the usual physio, etc. going on. And of course, we're still having that one last burst of heat here in Bendigo. I think today is going to get up close to 37, 38 degrees again, which I think in American terms is around well over 100 degrees anyway. So we're headed for yet another hot day today. It becomes really difficult to find the energy to record once you reach the afternoon and the house has just become really, really hot. Hence the reason that I've been a bit lackluster this week. Hopefully, with the weather cooling down, that'll make a difference. And now that I've almost got the all clear on my shoulder, my next appointment isn't for another fortnight or something, so hopefully there won't be too many more interruptions to my schedule. So, first of all, I want to thank a particular subscriber for helping me to get hold of these particular versions from the state's attorney's office. There are sometimes obstacles when you don't live in America in terms of getting things via FOIA. So to that person, thank you. You know who you are. Now I will say, I would really like to start talking about the Madalena Kojakari case this week also, on top of Maddie's case. I have been saying for a very long time that I wanted to start covering Madalena's case, and it seems to be that every time I'm ready to jump in and start talking about it, there's something new comes up with Maddie's case. But I want to make that commitment that I will do my damnedest to get my first video out about Madalena this week, because this is another case that needs a lot of attention. It particularly needs attention because this child is still missing, possibly has been trapped. How do you say the word without YouTube getting traffic jams, that sort of thing. So it's not known where she is. It's not even known if she's still in the country. Her mother is being extremely silent, and it looks like her mother is possibly the one responsible for her being missing in the first place. It's a worrying case, I will say that. So I hope to start looking at that case this week, and I will do my best to try and do so. But in the meantime, we have all these audios from the state's office which have not been as heavily redacted as the original videos. Now, I don't have the same sort of software that Paula does that will allow me to pull out the bits that are different. And I actually think that it's better to just go through the whole thing, because then the things that have been previously redacted, you're at least hearing them in context, and you're hearing them in the sequence of the interview. We know from listening the other day to one of the videos where I was looking at all the things that show how much of a crap parent Jen was. I played a somewhat lengthy clip where the detectives basically confronted Jen over her lack of emotion. And then the progression there was that she basically worked herself up into this fake state of emotion simply because they had called her out. And without hearing all that together, it's something that could be easily missed. So I am going to go through each of these interviews that have been released by the state individually as a full, complete interview, and just share my thoughts and responses to each one of them. I know I have previously looked at one interview, I think, where I did a response to it. Other than that, at the time when these were originally coming out, I didn't have much of a following with regards to, well, I didn't have much of a following, full stop, and my videos weren't really being seen, so I didn't do this early on in the case. So this is kind of my first time doing it anyway. So on that note, let's jump in. The first interview that I have here is from the 27th of February at 11:16 a.m.
All right. Tuesday, February 27th, 2024, 11:16 hours for OCSO case 24-011313. Can you state your full name? All right. So I'm here to talk to you today. We're going to talk about, and you're familiar with kind of why we're talking right now, right?
Yes.
Okay. Can you tell me when is the last time you were with or you saw?
Saw her, I'm going to say Sunday night.
Okay.
I heard her one day getting ready for school.
So you last saw her Sunday night about what time?
I would say 11 p.m. before she went to bed.
And you were here at home?
Yeah.
Gotcha. And where did she go to bed? Was she in her room, your room, or something else?
She actually slept upstairs with her stepdad.
Mm-hmm.
We have a guest bedroom. We were all going to sleep together in the same bed, but I needed some good sleep. And I got a new job recently. I haven't been well rested. I needed some sleep. So I asked, hey, can you guys go to the guest bedroom upstairs?
Mm-hmm.
I knew he was going to get her ready.
Sorry. Okay.
It makes me sick to hear her refer to Stefan as Maddie's stepdad. I mean, they weren't even together. They weren't even, apparently weren't even boyfriend and girlfriend, and yet she calls him stepdad. And the laugh over we were going to sleep together, that does my head in too. How is that amusing? Maybe it is a nervous laugh, but seriously, any decent person would not even want to admit that out loud, if you ask me.
So, you needed some good sleep. So, was it about 11 o'clock?
Yeah. I sent them upstairs, and I went to bed.
Okay. And that was about 11?
Yeah.
And do you guys normally all sleep together? Because I know you said that she sleeps in your room with you typically, right?
She sleeps with me typically. Typically when my boyfriend comes into town, because he lives with his parents in Northport, Florida.
Mm-hmm.
When he comes to town, he'll sleep in the guest bedroom.
Okay.
You know, I actually think that when it comes to missing children's cases, that these very first interviews with the parents or the people close to the child are so crucial that it should be a team interview, not just one officer doing the interview and making notes at the same time. Because you can tell from this that he's clearly writing his notes as he listens to Jen, and he's missing opportunities for important questions. He's not really dug in about this whole sleeping together. He's not queried the fact that on one hand she's referred to him as a stepfather, then she's referred to him as a boyfriend, and then she's talked about him sleeping upstairs. Now, if he was a stepfather or a boyfriend, you would expect him to actually be sharing a bed with her, not sleeping upstairs, and yet the officer or detective has not asked her what the situation is here. Now, we know that in later interviews they do start knuckling down, but these early interviews are so crucial because this is before they've had time to process what you've been asking them and to adapt their story to basically try and sound more innocent. And I think had they gone hard at Jen right from the start, then by this point in time she might actually have been arrested and be awaiting her own trial. But instead, the focus here has only half been on what Jen was saying and half on note-taking. And can we be honest too, we've all seen the documents now. A lot of these detectives and officers are not good with their report writing, and there are inconsistencies between the interviews and the written reports. So I think it would definitely be far better to have one person acting solely as the scribe or one person as the interviewer, and then the interviewer can focus on what questions they're asking, what the answers are, and thinking about where to go based on the answers.
And Stefan is the one you're referring to, right?
Yeah, Stephen Sterns.
Stefan. How often does he stay here?
Oh, he moved away back in December, so I'm going to say he's visited at least 2 to 3 times since then.
Okay. Why did he move away?
He was offered a better, well, his dad had offered him a job, but it fell through.
Oh,
So
okay.
now we're trying to get him back here.
So that doesn't actually match up at all with the version that we have from Chris Sterns. There's never been any mention from Chris or Deb about them fixing him up with a job down at Northport. Basically, the story we got from Chris was that he didn't feel that Stephen was earning enough at Disney to be able to support himself, and it was a job that it was a dead-end job that wasn't going to go anywhere, and he didn't want to be paying rent for Stephen, so he moved him home because he didn't want to pay the rent. So there's no comment anywhere there from Chris or Deb about them actually getting him home to get him into a job. So as far as I know, this has only come from Jen. It was probably another one of those made-up stories that Stearns came up with because he didn't want people to realise that he was such a loser that his parents were saying, yeah, we're not paying rent for you anymore, you have to move back home. Because at 37, who wants to admit to that?
And he just visits.
Yeah.
When he visits, does he stay for like hours, days, weeks?
I would say days. This time we had planned on him staying a whole week because I was going through training at work. So I wanted him to be here to help me with the dog, help me with while I was at training.
Okay, so this time he was planning to stay for a week.
Why did she pause after saying this time he was planning on staying for a whole week before coming up with the excuse of the doing training and needing him to help with the dog, yeah, and Maddie, yada yada? Sounds to me like that's definitely not the reason that he was planning on staying for the week. I would imagine that part of the reason for him being there for a longer period of time was for Jen's birthday, because as we know, everything evolves around Jen. She probably organised to have the night off work to celebrate her birthday, because that's what you do when you're Jen Soto. don't bother taking the night off work for your daughter, but definitely for your own birthday. That's what I'm willing to guess.
How long has he been here? Or when did he arrive, rather, this time?
I can't remember if he arrived Saturday or Sunday morning.
Okay, that's fine. Sometime this weekend?
Yeah.
I can't understand why there's so much confusion over what time Stephen actually arrived, or what day even Stephen arrived on the weekend. Neither Jen or Stephen seem to be able to give a straight answer for that. And then you have Chris saying that he left during the day on Sunday, but essentially suggesting that Stephen left around lunchtime on Sunday, meaning that he was in Kissimmee for way, way longer than what we're supposed to actually believe. So why can't anyone give a straight answer in terms of when Stephen actually arrived? Now, there is a sun pass on the vehicle. We've seen it in the photos that were taken at the time that the car was gone through. So I have no doubt that they would have got the sun pass records and probably know what time or when he arrived back or up at Kissimmee. So I'm curious why that information hasn't come out. So there's a lot of questions here for me.
So that was last night around 11. And so about what time did you hear her on Monday morning?
I heard everyone getting ready around, I'm going to say 7:30, 8 o'clock.
And was it just Stephen and or who else lives here?
I have roommates.
Okay.
I have there's one roommate, and then
Okay. And you just heard all of them, or did you hear anyone in specific?
no, I just heard. If anything, Stefan came and woke me up accidentally because he was trying to let the dog out, and the dog gets really nervous sometimes. So I was trying to help him with that, get him on his leash, but he got him situated and took him for a walk.
Okay. Did you hear at around 7 or 8?
I heard noises in the kitchen, but I'm not sure,
Not sure who it was exactly.
Who it was exactly, yeah.
Gotcha.
It could have been any of the roommates.
But you didn't see her leave Monday morning. Were you still in bed or still in your room?
I was still asleep, yeah.
Gotcha.
Now this is interesting because this interview was Tuesday morning, so it was around 11:16. So it was before her and Stefan had really had much time to combine their stories, basically. It was before they had that 4-hour block of time sitting in the car talking. And what we have here is in terms of her talking about when she heard everyone getting up and when she heard the dog, etc., etc. Now she's placing Stefan going in to collect the dog at around 7:30, 8 o'clock, which would actually fit with the time that it appears that he put Maddie in the car. We know he had Maddie in the car around 7:30. We know he was caught on camera at 7:30, or the car was caught on camera at 7:30 with Maddie in the car. So this goes back to my question of, did he go in and put a lead on the dog to get it out of the way so he could get Maddie at the house? That dog was super loyal to Maddie. And now when we hear Jen's timeline, the first version of it, it would actually fit perfectly with him needing to contain the dog so he could get Maddie out of the house without the dog getting in the way. I'm definitely leaning towards that. Probably he tied it up somewhere. Who knows? But it's definitely curious. Because we know too that from one of the flatmates, the cat sleeps in the room with Jen, not the dog. The dog sleeps out in the living area near the couch. So that means that when Stefan has woken Jen up, trying to wrangle the dog has, for some reason, gone dashing into Jen's room from the living area, and Stefan's gone in after it. So it was probably never a plan to interrupt Jen's sleep with the dog. I mean, that is unless Jen already knew, but it certainly fits in terms of the time frame of him actually wanting to stop the dog from getting in the way. I guess the big question here would have to be, if Jen did know what Stefan did to Maddie, at what point in time did she find out?
What time does she normally leave for school?
We usually leave around 8:50 at the latest.
Okay. What time does she have to be to school by?
9:28 is when school starts.
Gotcha. And so I think you had said the previous night, you and Stefan had agreed that he was going to get ready and take her in the morning? Okay.
And they were going to stop at McDonald's and get breakfast, but she changed her mind last minute and did not want McDonald's.
Okay. When'd you find that out?
When did I find that out? When Stefan called me around 10:18 in the morning, I had stepped out to go get blood work done. And he had just let me know that he just got back home from running a few errands. And that I asked, did you guys ever just stop at McDonald's? And he said, no, she changed her mind. He tried convincing her a few times, but she did not want McDonald's anymore.
Now, why was it so important for Stefan to ring her while she was waiting for her blood work appointment? I mean, at the end of the day, we're talking about a 15-20 minute drive to her blood work appointment. Supposedly the appointment was 10:30. How long does it take to do blood work? Not long at all. She would have been back at the apartment, had she been on time, well before 11, and yet for some reason it was important enough for him to ring her and give her a play-by-play of his morning. And she's so matter-of-fact when she talks about McDonald's. She doesn't express anything about the fact that it meant that Maddie hadn't had breakfast. She doesn't express any concerns about the fact that by choosing to not go to McDonald's, that would have meant that Maddie was going to be there way too early. None of this stuff comes up at all. Not even in the later interviews. Seems like if Jen genuinely knew nothing, I would expect her to be questioning some of these things. But instead, she's just reeling off Stefan's story. No questions whatsoever. To me, that makes her look guilty.
What time did you leave the house yesterday in the morning? Or what time did you step out, rather?
I'm going to say around 9:30.
Had Stefan returned at all?
No.
So you were there from, just so I have my times kind of right, so you woke up around 7 or 8. you saw Stephen, because you helped him with the dog, because he was letting the dog out, right?
Yeah.
And then did you go back to sleep, or were you just kind of in the room?
I laid back down and went back to sleep.
Okay. And then, do you remember what time you woke up after that?
I believe I set my alarm for 9 a.m.
Gotcha. So, it would have been around 9 a.m. that you woke up. And in that time, you didn't see Stephen return at all? Okay. You left around 9:30, and then Stephen called you around 10 to say he got home?
Yeah.
Now, here's a question. Now, for me, if I'm getting ready for morning, by the time I have a shower, do makeup, get dressed, even if I am rushing, the fastest I can do that is within 45 minutes. Jen basically is saying that she left at around 9:30, got up around 9. The data that we actually see on her phone shows that she apparently didn't get up till around 8 minutes past 9, meaning that she had about 20 minutes to get ready and get out the door to her appointment. Did she bother to shower, or did she just crawl out of bed and just put on makeup and wear the same clothes? I don't know if it's hugely relevant to this case, other than she claims that she needed Stephen to take Maddie to school because she needed her sleep. Well, she managed to get herself organised within 20 minutes to get out that door. She was at her blood work appointment super early. She was waiting in the car park at 10:15, 15 minutes after Maddie's school started. Meaning that had she gotten up even 20 minutes earlier, 8:30, instead of 9 o'clock, she could have been heading out the door at 9 o'clock and got Maddie to school on time. She didn't need Stephen to take Maddie to school that day. There's so much more going on behind the scenes with this story. I'd be really interested to know what the actual truth is.
Got it. Okay. Did he say anything else aside from she didn't want to go to McDonald's?
About her, no. About his morning, yes. He had tried going to the vape shop when it opened right after he dropped her off from school and waited, but they never opened on time, so he came back, hung out a little bit, and he came home around 10 and then went back out eventually to the vape store to go get some vape stuff.
So he left after 10. What time did you get back home for the day?
Let me check something. I want to check what time my blood work appointment was at. I'll give you more of an accurate time.
Yeah.
Okay, so my appointment was at 10:15 and it took them 45 minutes to see me. So I didn't get home until 11:15, 11:30.
And was Stephen back at that point in time?
I'm gonna say yes.
Okay.
I can't remember.
Now, this whole vape store part of the narrative is so important to both of them. And that's one of the things that definitely makes me lean towards Jen having guilty knowledge. Because, you know, the rest of the stuff, she's so vague about, oh, he went out in the afternoon to various places to look for these cards, what are they called, the Loricana or something cards. So she's really vague about that. And yet, when it comes to the vape store, they're both very specific about the vape store. And hey, do you want me to tell you which vape store so that you can check surveillance and see that he was there? Like, hello? I mean, at the end of the day, you have the one place where they could get surveillance footage, where they could get receipts, etc. Because obviously there's no receipts produced for the afternoon because we know none of that happened. There was no, when Jen was telling the story, there was no, do you want me to tell you where the stores were that he went in the afternoon? No, it's only pushing the vape store, which to me says that that was part of the alibi. He needed to be seen that morning without Maddie. So to do that, he went to the vape store. We know that when he did go to the vape store, at that point in time, Maddie was in the trunk of the car. So any surveillance would have shown only Sterns going to the vape store. So it's interesting that she really has to push that part of the narrative. Now, one thing that I'm really confused about, and I've said this multiple times, why does she maintain this story of being home when Sterns came back, or him being there when she came back, sorry, because he wasn't. He was not at the apartment when she got back from her appointment. He came back at around 11:45. 15 minutes later, while both of them were in the apartment, he reset his phone. So, for some reason, every single interview that she's given, Jen has said that Stephen was there when she got back. And they never challenged her on that, and I don't know why they have never challenged her on that. Would have been interesting to hear how her response changed once they challenged her there. Probably would have been something along the lines of, well, I wanted to believe that he was there when I came home. Sound familiar?
And then what did the day look like after that? That's fine.
So I did my blood work, then I came back, and then I just waited. I waited for the rest of the day until 2:30 to leave, to go pick up from school. I wait in the car line, so I'm first in line to pick her up.
Yeah, that car line can be vicious.
Yeah.
So you left approximately 2:30.
Yeah.
And pickups around 4, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Now when you got there at 4, then what happened?
I waited in the car line for about 10 minutes, and she never came out. So I thought, maybe I missed her. I couldn't remember if I told her I was picking her up from school that day or if she had to walk to my mom's office.
Okay.
So I went to my mom's office to see if she made it. She never did. I drove around a little bit.
Okay.
Now, I would love to see a video of this interview, because I'm willing to bet that when Jen is narrating this whole I went to pick her up from school story, that during each one of those pauses, that she is actually looking at the detective, trying to get cues, trying to see if he is taking in her story. Because you hear, she gives a part of the story and then she pauses. But it's not fading. There's no fading facts there. It honestly sounds to me, and also the way her voice raises at the end of each part, it sounds to me like she's trying out this story for the first time and she's pausing in between each bit to read the room, essentially, to see which parts of her story are working and which parts aren't. I mean, we've heard this story repeated over and over, so it seems that she got the reaction that she was wanting from this detective.
I drove around a little bit looking for her. I went back to the school. The school was closed at this point. I wanted to speak to somebody at the office to see if anybody could tell me if she had been there. I think at this point I had called, before I went to the school, I actually called her best friend and I said, hey, is she with you? I can't find her. She didn't walk to the office and she wasn't at school when I went to pick her up. She said she never made it. She's like, never made it to first or second period. And I'm like, what do you mean? I dropped her off. We dropped her off close to school. And she said she didn't make it to first or second period. I said, please check with the rest of your friends. She did. She got back to me, said none of them saw her today. I emailed one of her teachers. Her teacher texted me her attendance for the whole day and told me she wasn't in school at all. That's when I knew something was wrong.
This whole narrative that she's giving actually reminds me of Candice Bly when Summer Wells first went missing. And she's telling the whole story of, we got back and Summer jumped out of the car and she ran into the house, and it just doesn't sound credible. It's a narration. That's all it is. There's no intonation in it. There's no emotion in it. You know, we're supposed to believe that having contacted Maddie's friend and having heard back from the teacher, that Jen suddenly started to panic. Well, where's that sound of panic in her voice? There's no indication that this woman ever had any concern over her daughter being missing. She is telling it very plainly. Yeah, and then, I just started to panic a little bit. Bullshit, Jen.
And I freaked out and I called 911.
Okay.
Yeah, Jen, I'm sure you think it sounds better for you to say that you called 911, but the call is recorded and we've all heard it, and we know that Letitia actually called 911, not you. And the subsequent 911 calls, none of them were you either, Jen. It just blows my mind that there's no concern in her voice while she's telling this story, and she's making these claims like, oh, and I called 911, when we know she didn't. I mean, I wonder how much longer it would have taken to call 911 had it not been for someone else taking the initiative and going, we need to call 911 now because Maddie's been missing for so long already.
Is it typical of to walk to her grandma's office after school?
If I'm working, yes.
I love the way she just it's like, if I'm working, yes. Because we know that until she started this latest little job, this bit of training, she wasn't working. That means it wasn't typical for Maddie to walk to Yolanda's office. Not only that, wouldn't you... I mean, supposedly the story is that Stephen came for the week to help her out with Maddie. Wouldn't you have said to your daughter, I will pick you up after school because I'm not working? But none of this gets mentioned at all. She just lets them presume that it's something really, really regular for Maddie to walk to Yolanda's. Like, oh, well, like she's been working all along, and that she has shifts, and that on the days when she has shifts, Maddie works to Yolanda's. I mean, as far as we know, there's different versions of how long she'd been working for. One version I've heard is that she'd only been there for a week. I've also heard that she'd been there a few weeks. But let's be real, before then, it wasn't a regular thing to Maddie to walk to Yolanda's because Jen wasn't working. There are so many things that she's trying to normalise when they're not normal. I think it's convenient for her to make it sound like it's more normal than what it is for Maddie to walk to Yolanda's, because that gives her an excuse for leaving the car line. Why did she leave the car line? I believe that at that point in time she knew that Maddie had never been to school. She knew Maddie wasn't going to be coming out, and she didn't want to be questioned because she didn't think she could act sufficiently. Maybe I'm wrong, but that is the only explanation I can come up with for a parent to spend an hour waiting in the car line only to then leave 6 minutes after school gets out. And this is where, basically, if you look on the school website, it's clearly outlined. The students who walk home, go on bikes home, they exit the school first. Then the students who are in the car line go after those children. Meaning that when Jen is saying Maddie's always one of the first ones out, that's BS, because the first students that are out the door are the ones that live locally and walk home or ride their bikes home, not Maddie. So all this is inaccurate, and it's designed to deceive, if you ask me.
And where's her grandma's office at? I mean, in relation to the school, like, is it a close walk, long walk?
It's a very close walk.
Okay. So typically in the morning, if, or I guess before Stephen moved, did he live with y'all? Were y'all living together as a family?
Uh-huh.
For about how long?
On and off for about, I'm going to say 7 years.
Oh, so he's very familiar with her then, okay.
Yeah,
so
he's pretty much raised her. She considers him dad.
Okay.
I feel sick when I hear her say that. He's pretty much raised her, she considers him dad. He does not deserve that title, and how dare Jen even try to give him that title. She's even said on again, off again. The guy was in and out of their lives, supposedly. We know that there were periods of time when they were living with Yolanda, periods of time when he was back down living with his parents. And even if he was in their lives for 7 years, well, Maddie wasn't 7. That means he came into their lives when Maddie was 5, 6. That doesn't make him her father. And it's cringeworthy to think of her describing him as a father. So far, he's been described as, in this one interview, stepfather, Jen's boyfriend, and now she's like a father. Never ever should he be considered as being like a father.
That's who she calls dad.
Okay. And he's like your intimate partner, right? Your boyfriend? Got it. So it's...
And then she doesn't correct him when he asks her, so he's like your intimate partner, your boyfriend? Neither one. I mean, we know that they supposedly split up December, over 12 months beforehand. He was living in the upstairs bedroom for like 4 months before he moved out. They were not intimate, and she's even said in various interviews they had not been intimate since 2020, end of 22, I think. Hang on, 24, end of 23. They hadn't been intimate since. But she doesn't correct this guy at all.
Typical of him to be able to get her ready in the mornings and drop her to school. Do you all tend to split that responsibility, or what does that look like?
Typically, I do it.
Okay.
This morning, because of my work schedule, because I've been so exhausted, I asked him to take over and do it, and he said he would.
Okay. Has he done it before, though? Like, is he familiar with how to drop her off? And
I'm gonna say he's done it once or twice before. I'm not too sure.
Okay.
And again, why the need to lie and say that he's dropped Maddie off once or twice before? We've heard from the flatmate that he didn't drop Maddie off normally. We've heard from Maddie's best friend that he's never dropped Maddie off before. But she has to say here that, once or twice. And other times it's, more than that. To me, it seems like the first explanation that comes to mind for me is that she has to normalise it. Which makes me think that she knew before he left that house that morning that Maddie was deceased. Otherwise, why the whole elaborate story of him taking Maddie to school when we know he's never done this before? He's never taken Maddie to school before. Her explanation of him coming to help out because she had to work doesn't make sense. When she was explaining it in this interview, she paused before saying that this was why he came. And no one ever asks why he had to come on the Sunday night when Jen wasn't working again till the Wednesday.
In the time since he's been back, well, not this time because he's only come back over the weekend, but in the other times, he's done it maybe once or twice.
I'm gonna say yeah.
Is there any reason that he dropped her off a block away instead of dropping her off to the school?
Because she asked. Because she is embarrassed of his car.
Really? When did she express that?
Multiple times when we've been like, okay, I think Stefan might take you to school or he might pick you up. She goes, can he pick me up far away? Can he leave me here? Like, I don't want to be seen. I'm just like, it's just a car.
What car does he drive? I'm curious.
It's that Buick.
Oh, okay.
But to her, that's an old hoopty car.
Fancy taste, I get it.
So from Stefan maybe dropping Maddie off once before, now we have Maddie expressing many times, both from being dropped off and picked up by Stefan, that she needs to be dropped off or picked up far away from the school because she's embarrassed by his hoopty. I hate hearing them say that now, the hoopty, because both of them use that term. It's not a term that we even use in Australia. We would refer to an old bomb, not a hoopty. But this whole story is a joke anyway, because we know this is the first time that he has brought the Lincoln. He's never ever driven the Lincoln to Kissimmee before. And she doesn't even skip a beat when he asks her what sort of car does he drive. And straight away he drives a Lincoln. She doesn't turn around and say, normally he drives an old Honda, but this time he's driving a Lincoln. And I mean, at the end of the day, Maddie probably wouldn't have even known what car he had arrived in on the Sunday night, unless he told her. But the point there is, as far as we know, Maddie had never been in the Lincoln. So why would she suddenly express this notion that it's a hoopty and she doesn't want to go in it? It's just complete utter BS. Now, we don't have Lincolns in Australia, and it took for one of my subscribers to point out to me these are luxury cars. So I'm not sure what the equivalent would be for us in Australia, but I would imagine most teenagers, despite the age of it, would be quite happy to be dropped off at school in a luxury car. But that's irrelevant, because we know it's just a made-up story. She's completely ignored the fact that this is not his usual car. And she's not told detectives this. And detectives have never questioned her on this either. There's so many things that Jen has lied about and been never questioned on.
I get it. Can you remember anything about Sunday or Saturday or this weekend where she may have said that she was wanting to hang out with friends or something she was wanting to do or anything?
On Sunday, she actually had her party, and she had some friends come over. So she hasn't expressed that she wanted. She actually got to spend time with friends and family. She had a great Sunday.
Okay.
She came back with a lot of presents. She was super happy.
Okay.
Now, we heard from one of Maddie's friends who was at the party that there was one present on the table, and that Maddie was very upset because she didn't get a lot of presents. She only had 2 friends turn up to her birthday. The rest of the people at her birthday were family. Sounds like the family members probably gave her money for her birthday. So why does Jen have to lie about Maddie having lots of presents? Because to me, from what I can understand, she got 1 present at her party, and then she got some jewellery that was sent from Deb Sterns and given to her by Stephen Sterns. And they're the only presents she got. Stephen didn't get a separate present, he gave her the present that Deb sent. So, at most, she got 2 presents. If you split the jewellery up into 2 separate boxes, I think Deb said there were earrings and a necklace. So maybe you could count that as 3 presents if you're trying to be generous. We also know Maddie was quite upset. She was upset with Jen for not going to her party, and she was upset because so many of the people that she invited to her party didn't go. And of course she was upset because she didn't get a lot of presents and she didn't get as much money as she had hoped. This is one of the many, many things that convinces me that Jen did not see Maddie on Sunday night, or that Jen had an argument with Maddie on Sunday night and it was a very, very brief encounter between the 2 of them.
So, no arguments at home recently or anything?
No, nothing like that.
Has she ever, in the totality of, I guess, everything, as long as she's been, has she ever gone off to spend time by herself, or gone to hang out at a park by herself, or something to kind of clear her own head?
So there's a lake right behind this building.
Mm-hmm.
She'll sometimes sit at the dock by the lake, but I check on her often.
Okay.
Now, if your daughter is missing and you are genuinely concerned and you are genuinely hoping that detectives will find your daughter, you'd be upfront, wouldn't you? Now, I'm not convinced. Maybe Maddie did go hang out at that spot by the lake. I can't see Jen being the sort of parent who would bother to check up on her frequently. I can imagine that would have been a spot that Maddie went to if she'd had a fight with Jen and wanted to get out of the house, in which case Jen is so pathetically immature that she probably would have just ignored Maddie until Maddie came home. But here's the thing. From the very, very brief interview that occurred with Yolanda, we do know that there was at least one incident where Maddie had a fight with Jen, and she rang Yolanda and she said, I don't want to go back home. And Yolanda asked her where she was, and she was walking the streets apparently, and Yolanda told her, you have to go back home. So Jen's lied. Maddie has at least once headed out on her own because of an argument with Jen. But Jen doesn't want to make herself look bad. She's more concerned with saving face than with giving any information that could actually be beneficial to detectives to actually help them to find her daughter.
I'm just trying to figure out, I mean, if she, I don't know if something at school upset her, something here upset her. Not that it would be anyone's fault, but if there's somewhere that she may go for, like, you know, peace of mind.
Yeah, it would be the lake right behind the house.
Does she do any extracurriculars?
No.
Got it.
Now, is it normal these days for children not to have extracurricular activities? Or is this just because Jen couldn't be bothered taking Maddie to anything and therefore didn't encourage her? Because I know when I was Maddie's age, I had one afternoon free per week after school. Every other day after school, I had something on. Weekends, I had something on. You know, my Saturday afternoons for 10 years were committed. And pretty much, like I said, every weekday I had one afternoon when I didn't have to be anywhere. Every other day I had something on. So I find it interesting that Maddie apparently had no extracurriculars. So I am curious, is this what the world has come to with digital technology, where now we're happy for our children to just come home and sit down with their digital devices and entertain themselves that way and not get out and do extracurriculars? Or is this just a Jen thing?
Now, your roommates, I know you told me their names earlier, but can you give them to me again? I didn't write them down.
Sure.
Do you have their phone numbers by chance?
Yeah.
If they're not here? Are you okay? Do you have to use the bathroom?
No, I'm just anxious.
Oh, okay.
I've got anxiety. Let me see.
Again, it's about Jen, it's not about Maddie. When he asks her if she's okay, she's like, yeah, I'm just anxious. I have anxiety. Well, I would have expected more along the lines of, I'm just really worried, or I'm sorry, I've had no sleep because I've just been so worried about my daughter, or I'm so stressed out. But no, it's anxiety. It's a Jen thing. She's not saying that she's concerned about Maddie. She's just, this is who I am. She's like, I have anxiety. It doesn't necessarily connect to the fact that Maddie's missing. Apparently Jen has anxiety, so we just have to feel sorry for her. Not because her daughter's missing, but because she has anxiety. Now, I will be uploading this version of this interview after this video goes out. I've just removed a big chunk of this, well, not a big chunk, about a minute worth of this interview, which is basically her giving him details of the flatmates, because you have a lot of blank space there. I've left that in the uninterrupted version though, so you will hear that if you go and listen to the uninterrupted version.
Alright. When's the last time that you got in any kind of trouble at home?
I'm going to say a few weeks ago.
What was that for?
I don't think... if she gets a yelling, or if she gets in trouble for anything, it's for her disorganization and messiness. How she leaves laundry on the floor,
Okay.
Her room's a mess, she keeps her space very disorganized. So I kind of get on top of her. Do I remember the actual argument? No. When I went through her text messages back on February 2nd or 3rd, she had expressed to a friend that, I was crazy. I was acting, Mom was being nuts.
Almost old stuff to say.
Yeah, apparently I don't remember this in this conversation. I remember saying this once, but not in February. But she had said, if she continues to behave this way or not listen, when she turns 18, I'm not going to want to live with her.
Okay.
Or also I would ship her off to her dad's.
Oh.
But I never...
Now, what she's done there is really interesting. She has, on one hand, claimed that it was a few weeks since Maddie last got into trouble, but then she goes into generic mode, not talking about what Maddie got into trouble then, but instead going, if she gets into trouble for anything, it's because she leaves her clothes on the floor or does this or does this. So she's avoiding saying what Maddie got into trouble for and then saying, I don't recall what it was last time. And then she changes the dates to around the 2nd of February. So I suspect there might have been a big blowout 2 weeks previously, and she's not going to tell detectives what it was about, because she's now backtracking further back. 2nd of February isn't a few weeks ago. That's 3 weeks ago, more than 3 weeks ago. And she's so dismissive about this whole text message of Maddie saying to her friends that Jen was going to send her to live with her father or didn't want to live with her when she was 18. Like it's an acceptable thing to say. It's really not acceptable. And I know parents sometimes just become so frustrated that they say things that they regret afterwards. But I've not heard one positive thing from Jen. So I'm not willing to give her the benefit of the doubt there. But you know what's interesting? She's homing in on around the 2nd of February as being a date when something went on between her and Jen, her and Maddie. Something to the extent where she threatened to send Maddie to live with Tyler. Well, here's the thing. In a later interview, she says that she was tracking Maddie's cycle, and she knew, without having to pause, without having to stop and look it up, she immediately knew that the last time Maddie had her period was the 1st of January. So Maddie's period would have been due again around that last week of January, first week of February. Is that the reason why they got into some sort of fight? Jen claims that she hadn't noticed Maddie didn't get her period. And yet here, she's basically saying there was something that went on between the two of them at the beginning of February, around the time when Maddie appears to have missed her period. It may be nothing, may just be coincidental, but she's being really vague here. She claims she's got no idea what was going on between them, why they were arguing, what the fight was over. She seems to be vague about a lot of things when she doesn't want to give an answer.
Where did Dad live? Has she ever expressed wanting to go back and live with him?
No.
How often does she see him or talk to him at all?
Talks to him once in a while.
Via phone or probably?
Yeah, via phone, yeah.
Okay.
Text message or Instagram, they'll message each other. But I talked to him last night, and she's like, just so you're aware, she hasn't said anything about making plans to come over here or see me or come visit me, so he doesn't have any information on where she might be.
Okay.
He's actually willing to come over here, too, if we need him to.
Okay.
Ironic, isn't it? Tyler did actually travel all the way from Texas to Florida because his daughter was missing. Jen couldn't even get out of her house to go looking for her daughter. She didn't want to mess up her sleep. And then she thought that she needed to be there just in case Maddie came back. And then after she was thrown out of the house and had no longer had that as an excuse, the story became, I didn't want to be seen in public, I needed to hide out. I'm not hugely familiar with American geography. I've got a fair idea of where Texas is. I do know where Florida is. It does seem like a fair hike to me to get from Texas to Florida. Which parent is a better parent here? I know people criticise Tyler for being an absent parent. He himself has said that he was an absent parent. Jen, her story changes, goes back and forth. Here she's saying that it sounds like she's inferring that there was regular communication between Maddie and Tyler. Other times she infers that Tyler just didn't have enough to do with Maddie. Who knows what the story there, and honestly, in this instance, I'm not going to say I don't care, but I don't find it significant because Tyler wasn't the one responsible for what happened to Maddie. Yes, he was a long way away, so he was an absent parent. And maybe had he lived closer, things could have been different. Maybe if Stephen Young was still living in Florida, things would have been different. But we can't go with the what-ifs when it comes to other people in the scenario. We have to look at the situation, and we need to focus on Jen Soto and Stephen Sterns. Not Tyler, not Stephen. I do focus on Deb and Chris, I know. because I think they let down Maddie. I also think that they initially jumped in to help Stephen out before they realised the extent of what he had done.
But she's never made any plans, I guess, to go see him.
No.
What's her dad's name? Do you know his phone number?
Yeah. So I think it's this one. It's
And he lives in...
Yeah.
How long has he lived? Or how long have y'all been separated?
We were never together.
Okay.
Yeah, we were never together when I got pregnant.
Okay.
He's always lived... he was in the military when I got pregnant, and he's always lived far away. Either it's Kansas or...
Oh, so he's never had any, like, custody or anything of her?
Nothing.
Okay.
Hearing her mention that Tyler always lived far away makes me realise just how manipulative she was in terms of getting pregnant with Maddie when Tyler was engaged to Tatiana. It's not like they lived just down the street. She had to have gone out of her way to catch up with Tyler, to spend time with Tyler, and to nearly destroy his engagement and his marriage. I do believe that she did intentionally get pregnant with Maddie to try and snag Tyler. I believe that she was probably jealous because Tyler was engaged. Because we know that there was a history with them quite some time earlier, but there was a history. So she couldn't stand the thought of him being engaged to someone else and got herself pregnant. And given how much Maddie looks like Tyler, I suspect that's one of the reasons why Jen didn't really seem to care that much for Maddie. Because Maddie reminded her of Tyler. Maddie not just reminded her of Tyler, but she reminded her of Tyler rejecting her for Tatiana.
And has she ever formed a relationship with him where they bonded and talk or anything that, like, she... I guess I would try to rule out the possibility that she would be trying to go to Texas and see him or meet up with him, or...
They're as close as they can be with how limited contact he does have with her. He texts her once in a blue, right? Not as consistent as I would like him to, but
okay.
I don't think she's making her move to go.
Yeah.
She's left her debit card here. All of her birthday money's here. Her cell phone's here.
Is it typical of her to leave her cell phone? Does she normally have it?
She's got ADHD. She's very forgetful. This happens often.
So now she goes from inferring that there were regular conversation between Maddie and Tyler to essentially saying that it wasn't, it was infrequent. And I suspect that's because even though it's all fiction, she doesn't want them to think that Maddie would prefer to live with Tyler. So she has to put this notion of, could Maddie have gone to live, decided she was going to go to Texas. She has to put that to bed straight away because it reflects badly on her. So now it's suddenly, they don't communicate that much. And she has to point out about her cards being left behind and all her money being left behind and her phone being left behind.
So she frequently forgets her things?
Yeah.
Okay. As far as her mental diagnosis, she's diagnosed with ADHD. How long has she had ADHD?
Since she was like 5, 6. They also diagnosed her at the same time with autism. So she's had an autism diagnosis for a few years now. I've reassessed her recently. They told me she had some autistic traits, but they weren't sure if she was autistic. So
this is where you get a bit of a chicken and the egg thing coming in. Was Maddie ADHD, or did she show signs of what appeared to be ADHD because she struggled with complex PTSD? Because we can have no doubt whatsoever that she definitely had complex PTSD from what she went through with Sterns. But there is such a overlap between CPTSD and ADHD that you would need a really efficient diagnosis to actually tell the difference. I will actually link a video down below, which is one that I did quite some time back, where I discussed the similarities between complex PTSD, ADHD, and ASD, autism spectrum disorder. There's significant overlaps in terms of ASD and ADHD. So it's not uncommon for someone with ADHD to present with symptoms of ASD. It doesn't necessarily mean that they have it. Although these days you get a lot of dual diagnoses, someone being diagnosed as having ADHD and autism. But like I said, autism, ADHD and complex PTSD present pretty much the same. There's a few different things, and you would need to do a proper psychological analysis to really know where you're coming from. But for her to have been diagnosed with ADHD around the time that Stephen came into her life, that's interesting. I'm not going to say that she didn't have ADHD. It could be that she had both. It could in fact be that Maddie had ADHD, was born with ADHD, because you don't develop it, you're born with it. And that when she started developing this complex PTSD, then that would have heightened her symptoms. And you would have had probably more symptoms appear. Things that may not have been apparent from the ADHD, but were symptoms of the complex PTSD. I'm probably confusing you now, but like I said, there is a video that I've done about this, and I'll link that in the description section below.
So, I mean, do you ever notice her mental capacity impacting her ability to, I guess, be around other kids or function normally?
I would say sometimes, because she acts... I'm not sure. Sometimes she'll make some decisions that I'm just like, where did that come from? Like...
Okay. I mean, is that like... Would that be a result of a mental disability, or would that be like a result of her being...
I'm not sure.
I mean, does she... I guess, like, basic questions I always kind of ask her. Can she feed herself without assistance? Does she shower and bathe without assistance? I mean, she has a phone, so she can text and talk to people. She has friends at school.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
I hate Jen's negativity about Maddie's ADHD. The fact that this detective has reached this conclusion that I need to check if she's not, delayed, essentially, really shows you just how much Jen is pushing this ADHD narrative as it being a major deficiency for Maddie. And it makes me think that Maddie probably spent her life being told by her mother that she was inadequate because of her ADHD. And that just breaks my heart. You know, one of my favourite things for saying about ADHD is that if you can show a child who has ADHD that you believe in them, the sky is the limit. That's when you start creating overachievers. Because the more encouragement you give a child with ADHD, the more driven they become. The more you put down a child with ADHD, the more they struggle just to function. We know what sort of parent Jen was in that regards.
And has she ever complained about school?
Not complained exactly. I know it's tough on her. She's given a lot of work. She's always behind on work.
Okay. Got it. And I think the deputies already last night kind of went through her social media a little bit, but if you're okay with it, I'd actually like to take her phone so that I can see if I can get anything else from it. Typically me being able to go through it and go through text and social media will help me sort of establish a pattern of where people go and whatnot. If that's something you'd let me do.
Sure. Will you take her phone away forever, or just for right now?
Just for as long as I need it to actually go through it. So
okay.
I'll give it back to you as soon as I'm done.
It really bugs me when she asks him, will you take her phone away forever? Well, what do you think, Jen? If your daughter is found in 2 hours' time after this interview, do you think they're going to keep her mobile phone? No, they're not. The only reason they could possibly need to keep it forever would be if Maddie was never coming back. It's a really odd question to be asking. To me, it's definitely one of the big red flags from Jen that says she's not expecting Maddie to ever come home. That says she knows Maddie's not coming home.
As soon as we find her, I'll give it back to her, hopefully. Yeah, I mean, that's just about all the questions I have at the moment. You know her better than I do. I guess my last thing would be like, what do you think based off of everything that we've talked about and everything that you've learned so far? Is anything sticking out to you as her mom?
No. Based off of everything, me knowing her and knowing how she is and how tight-knit we are, like, I don't think she would run away.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like she was taken, like, on that short walk from where she was dropped off to the school. It was early in the morning. I'm not sure how many cars were around.
Mm-hmm.
I think she was dropped off somewhere between 8:30 and 8:45 in the morning, which is earlier than we normally take her.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure.
Okay.
I want to say, I think from what I understood, Orange County got footage of someone by the church in a description of what she was wearing early that morning,
mm-hmm.
just hanging out in the parking lot, and then she got up and left.
Yeah, so the video, they wrote it here, but there was a video of essentially what looks like her at around 8:45, just about that time, walking into that church parking lot that's right near where she got dropped off by Stephen, and it looks like she sits there for about 15 minutes or so and then walks away. So
I'm wondering if it's typical for her to wait at that parking lot too for my stepdad to pick her up from school, so it's not abnormal for her to hang out there
in that parking lot.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we know now that is an outright lie. Yeah, her stepdad supposedly picks her up from where that church is after school. But Maddie doesn't typically hang out at that church. I mean, it's my understanding that these kids aren't hanging out anywhere outside of school grounds prior to school. Maddie's friends were waiting for her at the school grounds. They were waiting for her to be dropped off. So why would Maddie want to hang around somewhere on her own? This is a girl who has to have her friends walk her to the nurse's office because she becomes anxious. So why would she sit around in an empty car park for 15 minutes before going to school? Jen knows she wouldn't do that. That same thing. Jen probably is fully aware that Maddie wouldn't want to walk from that car park to the school first thing in the morning if she's such an anxious child. She is accustomed to being dropped off at the school every morning. She's never been dropped off anywhere other than at the school. And Jen knows that. So why did she need to lie this morning? Why did she need to jump on this whole story about the church and lie about it when she knows full well that that would never have been the case? The only explanation I can think of is that she's covering for Stephen. She wants them to believe this idea of Maddie having been taken by someone, because that gets Stephen off the hook. Don't look at Stephen. He dropped Maddie off. Look, there's a video at the church. And you know what? You can know that Stephen dropped her off because here's the address of the vape shop that he went to, and you can see him on camera there. So don't look at Stephen. Maddie was dropped off a distance from the school. Someone must have snatched her on her way to the school, even though she's never ever done that before, been dropped off a distance from the school and walked on her own. This child who has anxiety and can't go to the nurse's office without her friends, but was apparently more than happy to be dropped off a distance from the school and walk to the school, where she probably would have had to encounter during her walk older students that she wouldn't be familiar with, older students that would cause her anxiety to have them near her. Jen's lying, and it is so obvious.
Can you think of any reason why she might have chosen yesterday morning to wait there? I mean, obviously, your stepdad's not picking her up in the morning. But
I wonder if she knew, like, if she had an idea she was super early, so she was just trying to kill time a little bit. But I don't know why she didn't go directly to the school. She should have.
I think he was giving her an option there to basically admit that it wouldn't be normal for Maddie to do that, and to admit that it doesn't make sense whatsoever. I wouldn't be surprised if at this point he was already starting to be suspicious about Jen's story. I'm probably wishing that he'd have listened a bit more carefully and questioned her a bit harder instead of focusing on his notes. This is why what I said at the start of the video I think is important. I think in a case like this, when it comes down to questioning parents or people close to the child, that you should have probably the senior detective asking the questions and another detective with them scribing, essentially. The senior detective still has to write a report, obviously. They could write their report afterwards, either based on the notes taken by the other detective, or let's be original and listen to the actual audio that you've just recorded and write your report from that. Because there's so many missed opportunities here. I think he's just highlighted the fact that this is something that Maddie has never done. He's highlighted the fact that Maddie wouldn't hang out at the church before school, but would go straight to school. And yet he didn't press the idea either.
Okay.
I know when Stefan dropped her off, he said that he saw her rummaging through her phone as he drove away, like deeply looking into her backpack. Her backpack. Yeah. I'm assuming she was looking for her phone and realized she didn't have it with her at that time.
Got it.
But
okay.
Yeah.
Now, it's interesting that Jen messes up here, and instead of saying rummaging through her backpack, says rummaging through her phone. I think there's a bit of a slip here in terms of the narrative was meant to be that she was rummaging in her backpack looking for her phone. But somehow Jen got it mixed up in her head. She knew she had to introduce the idea of the phone being left at home, but she was so eager to do so that she messed up. But see, what's interesting here is that Stefan's interview, which occurred directly after this, meaning that they hadn't had much time to communicate between them, between the two interviews, he doesn't start with suggesting that Maddie was looking for her phone. He starts with he saw her rummaging through her backpack, same words, same language, and he suggests that she might have been looking for her headphones, but then he's like, but then maybe she was looking for her phone. It's interesting that he seems to have got it a bit more polished than Jen. And I wonder if this is perhaps his version of the narrative. And Jen just didn't quite remember what she was meant to say. But the way they describe it is almost identical. Except that Stephen adds the added detail of thinking that she might have been looking for headphones, but then she was probably looking for her phone because then he realised that she'd left her phone at home. Because she's got ADHD just like me. I have questions. I don't believe Stefan does have ADHD. I'll just say that now. But far too similar, what Jen and Stefan are saying. And this slip from Jen shows us that the whole intent of the backpack story was to introduce the idea of Maddie having forgotten her phone and realised that she'd forgotten her phone.
Does she have any kind of boyfriend or significant other at school that she's ever talked about or expressed?
No boyfriend. She did recently tell Stefan that she had a crush on a boy.
Oh, okay.
And we saw messages between them, and nothing seemed weird. But you can look through that as well. His name is...
I assume another middle school boy?
Yeah.
Okay. Got it. All right. Well, that is all the questions I have for you right now. I'm going to go ahead and end this, and I'll just get one more quick thing from you. 11:44 hours.
There's been a few things said which to me indicate that Stefan had quite a bit of access to Maddie's phone before it was given to the detectives. Here, she's just said, we saw messages from this boy. Meaning that while she has said that Stephanie and Stephanie's daughter had gone through Maddie's phone because Jen was apparently too distressed to do so, she's also essentially admitting here that at some point in time, her and Stefan have also gone through Maddie's phone together. We saw messages from this boy. Well, there were other instances where comments from Stefan made me think that he had had access to that phone without Jen being there. And that's disturbing, given that we know what was on his phone. Hopefully, if he did delete messages from Maddie's phone, they did retrieve them. But the question there would be, did he have access to Maddie's phone on his own prior to him and Jen looking at it together? Or after him and Jen looking at it together? Because now you have 4 different people looking at Maddie's phone. Let's take Sterns out of the equation. We have 3 people looking at Maddie's phone who supposedly knew nothing about what was going on with Sterns. And you're telling me they didn't see anything there of concern? Like, for example, the message that Maddie sent to Stephen saying that she wanted to get those parenting coins from Amazon. We should get these. They clearly either didn't look very closely at Maddie's phone, or they saw things on Maddie's phone that they're not going to admit that they saw. Now that brings us to the end of that interview. I'm glad I went back through it because there's actually a few things there. I don't know how much was previously redacted. I think a lot of this interview has stayed the same, but I do want to just work through all of them because I think now that we've gained more knowledge, I think it is actually a good time to go back over these interviews and look at them with the things in mind that we now know. It gives us a broader understanding of what was going on here. So I will move on to the interview from, I believe the next interview was from the 28th. And I believe there's a few big chunks there that had previously been redacted. I haven't listened to it, but I get the impression from what other creators are saying that there are things there that were redacted previously. So I'm going to finish it there. On that note, thank you for listening. If you are new to my channel, please subscribe. I would dearly love to reach 5,000 subscribers. Also, please hit the like button and leave a comment below. These are things you can do just to help me to build my channel, and they cost you nothing and they help me out immensely. Thank you, and I'll catch you in the next one.